Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in today's one we're testing the AMD FX 6100. This dates back to 2011 and you can pick these up pretty cheaply these days. The last time I checked in my local CEX I think this one was selling for about £2 with the FX 6300 selling for 15. So yeah, a pretty cheap CPU in 2023, but is it worth it? Well, let's see how it handles some games today. I've overclocked it a little bit, up to 4.2 GHz. It will boost to 3.9 or try to by default, but I've given it a little bump, and what this means in terms of actual CPU performance is that everyday usage will feel a tiny bit snappier, and when it comes to those CPU intensive tasks like rendering a video, it's going to be a bit faster as well. Gaming though, well, I've paired it with a GTX 1080 and 16 gigs of 1600 MHz dual channel RAM, and now we're going to find out just how well it holds up. Okay, so first up we have Assassin's Creed Mirage. This looks to be holding up fairly well so far. Big thanks again to Craig, the individual who sent this CPU over for testing today, along with the motherboard that we looked at in the other video. Now I've used a GTX 1080 because this is an older yet still pretty capable card, and you don't really want anything more powerful with an FX chip because the CPU is going to be the limiting factor anyway, even with this slight overclock. We're still seeing at least 30 FPS though, not too shabby. Whoa, a drop towards 30 there, just as expected. I'd ignore the temperature readings of the chip as well. I'm not sure these are entirely accurate. I wanted to display the core frequency as well, but I couldn't seem to do that within MSI Afterburner, nor could I display the power. As we continue with Assassin's Creed Mirage, bit stuttery here and there, but maintaining at least 30 FPS most of the time, which is quite surprising. You know, under normal circumstances, the 1080 could still handle higher graphics settings and run better than this. Up next, we have Counter-Strike 2. Now, I am pretty bad. Oh, actually got someone then. I'm pretty bad at Counter-Strike 2 at the best of times. So when we have a frame rate that's all over the place, it's just a bit of a massacre, as you can see, not only for myself but for the actual CPU, not faring too well. It actually makes aiming quite hard when the frame rate sort of judders about a bit, not to mention that the batteries in my wireless mouse are also going, so I really haven't set myself up for the best gameplay experience as it is here, but yeah, the frame rate is going to be the biggest problem for us today. The FX 6100 is still maintaining or at least hitting 60 frames per second a lot of the time, but as the game goes on, performance seems to get worse, and that is not really what you want in a competitive title such as this one. I am just getting absolutely destroyed here by every other player. Alright, so Cyberpunk 2077, as with all of the games tested so far, and including this one, the settings and the exact frame rates and averages and percentile lows will be up on screen. This one is doing okay. I mean, we're hitting 30 FPS. I'm just going to borrow this car and make my way to a slightly more CPU intensive area. This is going to be a busier area of Night City. The frame rate is suffering already and there really isn't much going on. We're using a preset here that the 1080 can otherwise handle, as I've done so with all the other games in this video, but yeah, I'm dreading to think what is going to occur when we drop down this off-ramp here. As expected, drops to, whoa, that was terrible, drops to the low teens there, pretty much 12, 13, 14 FPS maybe I think I saw. It stabilises a bit when we get out of the vehicle, but I'm going to have to chalk this one up as unplayable. Now I'm sorry to break up the alphabetical order of the video here, but I just thought I'd try Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, a pretty new game and quite a demanding one. Unfortunately this didn't want to launch at all on the FX chip. I mean, we got the MSI Afterburner overlay pop up, but after that it crashed to the desktop, so Avatar, it's a no-go I'm afraid. We also got a little bit of a loading screen before the crash too. Elden Ring now, as you know, this one is capped at 60 FPS by default within the game's engine, but we don't have to worry about that because we won't even be hitting 30. It is a bit of a terrible state of affairs here, with our FX 6100 holding back even the GTX 1080 with these settings. Now there are instances, don't get me wrong, when we appear to be getting 30 FPS. As you saw there, I mean we saw at least 30 FPS and that does happen when we make our way away from these sort of settlements and little areas, but overall we could play Elden Ring like this. It's not the perfect experience, but it's somewhat doable. Right, so Fortnite. This was a bit of a disaster. I played a couple of games. Sometimes this frame rate seems to smooth out, but here, during my third game, well, we're still seeing some horrendous inconsistencies. Sometimes the frame rate seems to be 60 FPS, and sometimes it drops to about 15. So this is going to be quite off-putting when we come across other enemy players. Oh, we've actually got a weapon there. Let's go and explore this house a little bit. Inside, as you can see, the frame rate does pick up a tiny bit, but as soon as we make our way back through that door, everything just jams up completely, and it really isn't a very good way to play. These competitive online titles are going to feel a lot worse than single player games where you might be able to put up with it a little bit more, because games like this where every frame counts, yeah, these inconsistencies can be quite game breaking. Red Dead Redemption 2 up next, and outside of town here, well, we seem to be getting a pretty good reading. I mean, it's a fairly solid frame rate. Let's just borrow this horse here. Why can't I move? Come on. Oh no, I know what's going to happen. He's going to steal him back, isn't he? Oh dear. Right. All I want to do, mate, is just get to Valentine so I can benchmark. Okay, give me the horse back. I just need to get to Valentine to see... Oh, not again. I need to see what happens to the frame rate. What is... Right, we need to deal with this. Hang on a minute. Let's just equip the old revolver here. Right, let's deal with that. Make our way... Oh, the horse is gone now. I'm going to have to run... Even here, yeah, we're dropping to, say, 30 FPS. I mean, this is definitely a more playable experience than we've seen in a few of the other games today. I think that's fair to say. But as with all of today's tested titles, the FX, even overclocked, is going to be a limiting factor. Even when we pair it with an older high-end card like the 1080, I mean, it wouldn't make a difference if you were to pair this with a modern 3060 Ti, for example, because the CPU is too much of a limitation. You're not going to gain much frame rate wise, even at higher resolutions. I don't even know what I was thinking trying Starfield. This seemed to run at about 15 to 25 FPS. I've just loaded one of my latest save games in Aquila here, one of my favourite little cities in the game. To be honest, I'm still playing and enjoying Starfield. I'm certainly not enjoying it on this hardware, but considering you can sometimes find FX 6100s for like £2, I don't think it's all that bad. I can't really call it playable. As you can see by the on-screen metrics, the CPU is holding our GPU back, and overall, it's a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. It is certainly older games like the Elder Scrolls Skyrim Special Edition here that do run the best on the FX 6100. This is another game with a 60 FPS cap, but we're going to be hitting 59-60 most of the time, and this one certainly feels nice to play. Skyrim is still a very popular release, of course, so it's nice to know that you can run it on an older CPU such as this one. That's going to just about do it for our FX 6100 experience in 2023. I am surprised that it's done as well as it has in some titles. Now that's not to say it does well, but there were a couple of surprises in here. It could have been a lot worse, put it that way. And if you're looking for something to play older games, perhaps lightweight titles, it's still going to do alright, especially once you've applied a slight overclock as well. But there we go. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know if you're still using a chip like this in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you want to, of course, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.